On this episode of Doing the Most, we're revisiting one of our most popular recipes to talk about just how flexible this beginner braggot is. This is the Wampus Cat.
Homemade brews and various how-tos, everything from mead to roast, bake creation, fermentation, inebriation, doing the most.
After you watch this video, you might want to check out our original video on the Wampus Cat. The link for that video will be in the description of this video. The Wampus Cat is incredibly flexible, and it's a very simple, very honey-dependent braggot. There's not a lot of malted grains in here. And for beginners, it can be very flexible. You can take the base Wampus Cat recipe and maybe change up the hops or add in some specialty grains, or maybe thicken it up with a little lactose or maltodextrin, or maybe even back sweeten just a little bit with erythritol to help bring back some of that honey character. There's a lot of things that you can do with the Wampus Cat, and it's kind of an open sandbox intro to braggots. So the base recipe uses one kind of hop. But if you wanted to substitute the Aroma Edition hop, there's plenty of different hops you could choose from. Things like Citra or Pacific Jade or Calypso might be fun choices. Also, the original recipe is heavily dependent on using Kveik ale yeast to get a really nice, interesting, and beery character out of the Wampus Cat. And as you well know by this point, if you're a fan of the channel, there are all kinds of different Kveik opportunities out there for you to play with. Strains like Voss are going to give it some citrusy, poppy notes. Strains like Hothead are going to give it all kinds of funky, hoppy esters. Or you might want something clean like Kveik Lutra, or something neutral but also estery like Kveik Hornindal. All kinds of different opportunities to play in the Kveik sandbox with this recipe. The Wampus Cat in itself is fairly thin-bodied, and it's meant to drink like a kind of light, honey-forward beer. If you wanted to thicken it up and give it more of a beery mouthfeel, like I mentioned earlier, you could add some lactose to cream it up and give it a nice kind of smooth and thick and rich mouthfeel. Or for something a bit cleaner, you could use maltodextrin to just give it some nice heft and chew, something that's going to help it coat the mouth a little bit more. Or you may want to use this as an opportunity to play with a few ounces of a specialty grain, something that's going to add a sugar cookie note or a biscuity note, or something that's kind of coffee or roasty. There's lots of different options, and just a little bit, maybe 4 to 6 ounces, could add another layer of flavor into the Wampus Cat. And two things that I really love about this recipe for beginners is, for one, there's no nutrient requirement. I don't recommend any nutrient in this, which I know seems wild given how much I harp on using nutrient for mead, but I do think there's enough in there with the honey malt that you don't need to have anything extra added, and I've done it a bunch of times without any extra nutrient, and it seems to go just fine. And secondly, there's no crazy gear required to pull off a 5-gallon batch. You don't need a 5-gallon brew kettle or a propane burner or anything like that. Honestly, you can do this with a 7-quart Dutch oven, no problem. So now that you know a little bit about why I think this is a great beginner braggot recipe, particularly because it's so flexible for specialty grains or different kinds of hops, let's look at the base recipe. The ingredients for this braggot are 4.5 pounds of wildflower honey, 1.5 pounds of buckwheat honey, 1 pound of honey malt, and 1.5 ounces of Centennial hops. We'll also be using spring water to 5 gallons. For our yeast, I like to recommend Kveik Voss or Hothead. You will need an ale yeast for this recipe. So this recipe actually gets brewed in a 7-quart Dutch oven. Any stock pot that can hold 1.5 gallons of liquid or more should work well for this. This was before I had my grain mill, so I just loosely mulched up my grains in the Vitamix blender. You can get your grains pre-milled by your local homebrew store, and I probably should have done that, but I was expecting to have had my grain mill by this point, but this works just fine. The one thing you don't want to do is mill them up into a powder, because that can make this kind of acrid. So, some people will recommend just rolling them over with a rolling pin to crack the grains. Grains go in the bag, and then we're going to check on our strike water. We want it about 10 degrees hotter than what we actually want to mash at. So here it's about 166 degrees Fahrenheit. We're hoping to keep our mash liquid around 150 to 155 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm actually going to place the lid on mine and stick it in the oven with the warming feature on to keep it at a consistent temperature. So what we're doing here is kind of a mash, and really what we're doing is steeping the grains. Now, honey malt, which is a malted grain that kind of tastes a little bit like honey, does have enough diastatic power to convert its starches into sugars. So as long as you keep this in kind of the 150 to 155 range during your mash, it's probably going to convert a lot of the sugars. It has enough to self-convert. However, what we're really looking for is the honey malt flavor in this. And believe me, this is the exact amount of honey malt you want to use for a 5-gallon batch. If you're going to freestyle here and put in some other specialty grains, this is the time to do that. You would put them in the bag with your honey malt during the mash. So what happens during the mash? Well, certain grains have enzymes like alpha amylase and beta amylase. And at certain temperatures, those enzymes will convert starches into sugars. And so we're a little bit hoping that that's what happens here. If you're making an actual beer, the amount of grains that have diastatic power that you would use in your mash would be enough to convert most of the starches in your mash into fermentable sugars. And it all does that naturally. Pretty cool, right? After 1 hour of steeping, we will pull our Dutch oven out of the oven, then remove our grain bag and allow it to drain. And then we're going to use some warm water to sparge our grains. Basically, we're just rinsing the flavor and the sugars off of them to make sure we get as much out of those grains as we can. Then we'll squeeze that bag and put in our hop spider. This is for straining out the large hops particles. You could use tea bags or even a tea ball for this. And at the beginning of our 1 hour boil, half an ounce of our Centennial hops goes in. With 15 minutes left in the boil, we throw in our Whirl Flock tablet to help this clear up after primary, and of course, our other 1 ounce of Centennial hops. And that brings us our aroma. So we're doing a couple of hop additions here, one early and one later. That early one is for bittering. The heat in here helps isomerize the alpha acids, thus making this a little bit bitter. If you don't like bitter beers or bitter braggots, you might omit the early hop addition entirely. That would be okay. The later hop addition is for aroma, and if you are going to be adding a different kind of hop, like for example, these New Zealand Pacific Jade hops, you would do that in the late hop addition, and you would substitute the other hop entirely. Then we're using buckwheat honey and wildflower honey in primary, and buckwheat honey is pretty thick. It's kind of like molasses, so you might have to microwave it just a little bit in order to loosen it up so you can get it in your brew bucket. The reason we use buckwheat honey in here in addition to wildflower honey is because it gives it a little bit of a pungency, a little bit of an earthiness, and kind of a little bit of a sense of maltiness. It kind of bolsters out that honey profile while at the same time kind of amplifying the malt profile in here. Buckwheat honey, in my opinion, is crucial to this recipe. And then this day my scale had broken also, so I had to pour my wildflower honey into a bag to weigh it using my hanging scale instead. So pardon the silly look of my honey addition here. And then at flame out, after 1 hour of boil, we will strain out our hops. So at this juncture would be a good time to add your lactose or maltodextrin. They dissolve really well in a hot wort like this. Now, keep in mind if you do that it's going to throw off your gravity readings just a little bit because you're going to have a higher potential alcohol by volume reading on your hydrometer, and in all likelihood you're going to end over 1.000, probably in the range of 1.015 to 1.020 when the fermentation is actually done. That's because when you're measuring gravity, what you're measuring is liquid density, and lactose and maltodextrin are non-fermentable, so the yeast are not going to break them down. Therefore, the added density that they give to your must is not going to change. So don't be alarmed if you don't finish all the way at 1.000 or lower if you use lactose or maltodextrin. Then our mash liquid goes in right on top of the honey. Be careful not to burn yourself as you're doing this. And stir, 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 just to get everything incorporated. And then we'll be topping that up to 5 total gallons of liquid volume. And then I'm using Kvike Tormagarden yeast here, and I understand that stands for Tom's Garden, which I understand is where this yeast came from. Yeast goes right in dry, we'll cover that up and let it ferment. 24 hours later, it's starting to look pretty good. And about 2 weeks later, we know that fermentation's completely done, so we're gonna get that racked off into secondary. Once in secondary, I added a little sparkleoid to help this clear up. Sparkleoid is a hot mix finding agent. About a tablespoon goes into 1 cup of boiling water, stir, 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 and then add it right to secondary. And this will just bond to a bunch of the big stuff that's in there in suspension and help it drop to the bottom and form a nice firm cake. The airlock goes on and we let it clear. In the past, I've recommended using carbonation drops for bottle conditioning. Here we're doing something a little different. We're racking onto a measured amount of priming sugar in order to mix that priming sugar throughout, immediately bottling, and then the yeast will consume that priming sugar and convert it to a little bit of alcohol and a little bit of CO2. And that CO2 will become suspended in the brew inside the bottle, thus carbonating it. That process can take anywhere from like 2 weeks up to a couple of months, depending on the ambient temperature and how excitable your yeast are when this goes into the bottle. Once we have this racked on top of our priming sugar and we are certain that all that priming sugar is mixed throughout the entire batch, we will move it back up to the bench and we will bottle from this bucket. I bottled this in 12-ounce beer bottles, and it took about a month for this to bottle condition and carbonate up inside those bottles, and this is best served chilled. So once this is done carbonating in the bottles, make sure you move them to a fridge so you can enjoy this nice and crispy cold. All right, now we've talked about the Wampus Cat, but what's it taste like? That's what you want to hear. Now that's beautiful. That's truly beautiful. I love this recipe, and I hope you do too. Now, if you freestyle on this recipe using a different hop or some specialty grains or a funky kind of Kvike, let me know in the comments. I love hearing about your riffs on this one. It's got that malty funk on the nose. As you saw, I used a strain called Tormagarden here, and hope I'm pronouncing that right. And it really gives a almost peppery funk to it. I think if you're a beginner and this is your first time, you might want to use something a little bit closer to home, like Kvike Voss or Kvike Lutra. But I'm really hype about this one because it brought some really unusual esters to the table. You can smell the honey. It's got a little bit of cereal grain kind of aromatics, definitely smells beery. And you can definitely pick up the pungent kind of sour note of the buckwheat honey. The only thing that would make this better is a big slice of pizza. Bottoms up. It's light, it's crisp, it's got that funky yeast character in there that just says, I'm beer, I'm beer. But you can also taste the honey in there. That honey malt is so good at just helping leave those hints of honey in there, so you're not losing a lot of that honey character, even though this ferments out pretty crisp. And icy cold, this is what you want to take out on the boat in summer, do a little fishing. So up front, there's a little bit of like a pithy orange zest, kind of refreshing bite to it that complements it as you swallow, because as you swallow it down, you get those delicate kind of light beer malty notes that wash back, and then when you exhale, you get just a little bit of honey flavor on it. If you like a sweeter beer, you might want to add a little bit of erythritol at bottling just to give it a little bit of sweetness, but it's really well balanced as is in just its purest, most raw form. At some point, when I get some free carboys, I'm gonna play with some other hops in here for aroma, and I might add a little bit of like biscuit wheat in here, something to give it just a little bit more of that kind of toasty and bready note that you kind of come to expect with a heavy malt beer. But as a braggot, particularly as a braggot that's incredibly flexible for you to play around with some of these other elements, it's so nice. It's so refreshing and hoppy, and I really like the orange zest pithy kind of character in here, which is totally due to the yeast I used. It's wild how just changing the yeast batch to batch can bring such an interesting new character to it that you didn't have using a different yeast last time. Super good. Super, super good. I hope you enjoyed this video about our beginner braggot recipe. I hope you'll also subscribe and hit that notification button to hear more from our channel. We do a lot of home brewing content here at Doing the Most. And if you're looking for more tips, tricks, help, join our Discord server, or, you know, follow us on the social media or catch us over on Twitch. We have all of these links here for you to enjoy. Until next time, keep doing the most, and cheers.